what message would you like to project? What is your leadership style? Who would you like to lead? What is your team made of? If you know the answers to those, then LinkedIn becomes an asset you can leverage. But if you master LinkedIn and have no clue about leadership, you're in for a bumpy ride. So start with leadership per se. What is the challenges that you face, and what are the strengths you have? Once you do this, now you can look at LinkedIn and try to minimize the gap between your regular leadership style and the actions you perform on LinkedIn. You could be a great leader and be an introvert. But Ted, if you're an introvert and everything you do on LinkedIn shows a different personality, then people who know you look at this and say, hey, this is not genuine, this is not authentic, this is not Ted. We're playing some role here. So the easiest thing to do, and something that many leaders find very challenging, instead of trying to find a new leadership style or a new personality, we have a personality. And that personality has served us well in the past. And there's no reason LinkedIn needs to change that. We need to convey we need to behave in the same way, because otherwise, whenever there's a gap, people think about your authenticity and about your integrity and ask themselves questions. Don't do that. Find your leadership style first.
Welcome to Strategic Edge, our subtitle, Applying Transformative Leadership. We are glad you could join us today. We are a podcast for leaders and by leaders. We're going to interview the best and the brightest of leaders to be able to provide you information. We're here to inform, to instruct, and to inspire you on your leadership journey. My name is Ted Davis. My company is Grace Strategic Services, Inc. We're proud to be the sponsor of this podcast. And we encourage you to take the information that we're going to share, make it your own, absorb it, then reflect on it. What does it mean to you? And finally commit to an action plan. So with that, let's get started with today's episode. Welcome. I am thrilled today for our podcast to welcome Daniel Elfon. Thank you so much for joining me, Daniel. I think you got a fascinating bio sketch, and if I could just set the highlights. You were born in Paris, grew up both in France and in Israel. You're right now living in Israel. You went to all your schooling, I see. You was in France, senior education, and graduated from university. I will not even attempt to pronounce it correctly. What was the university's name?
Bonne Nouvelle, Saint-Cyr.
See, there's no way I could have done that. I struggle with English, let alone anything else. Anyway, thank you. So your education was there. And then I love the fact that, as we were talking before the show, you started off in competitive intelligence analyst. That is, I find fascinating how you got into that. So tell us a little bit more about you and explain what a competitive intelligence specialist does.
Well, thank you very much, Ted. It's a pleasure to be part of the Strategic Edge. Competitive intelligence analysts basically try to summarize the situation in the markets, predict trends, and suggest insights the company's leadership needs to take attention to. Anything from regulatory changes, technological changes, M&A activity, new players, anything that would change or affect our company's position.
So it sounds like you played a key part in an organization's strategic planning. So you're using something like the typical classic SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats, or were you using strategic forecasting models? What shaped your analysis to be able to say, here's what's happening, here's the trends, here's the action?
In some cases, it was a classic SWOT analysis. In others, it was some sort of daily update of whatever happened in the mobile world in 2006. So it was more short term, many changes and that would affect the company's results. I found that the SWOT analysis is great even if you don't do anything about competitive analysis. Even as a leader for your own company, It's a simple and very powerful tool you could use. Everyone can understand it. Your team can understand it, and it's a great baseline and a great concept.
Did you use scenario planning as one of the techniques?
I used some in the past, and it was fun. It was fun because imagine, Ted, you're basically sitting as the movie director, and you're allowed to do almost anything. And in some cases, it's worth just seeing the manager's face when you say what would happen if that company went into our market, or if that technological change made our products redundant. And the aha moment that we face then will help us either move to new territory and move away from commodities and products that could be easily copied, and especially be aware of the fact that this is temporary and we need to keep reinventing yourselves every day, just as leaders do on a daily basis, or should.
I found scenario planning to be really, as much as I like to focus on execution, planning is still one of my fortes. And scenario planning, to look at what are the most likely, least likely, most likely, so forth. Lay out 3 to 4 scenarios and then play out, okay, if that happens. And of course, if you're going to create a scenario, everything you use to describe it has got to be coherent. So if you say, okay, what are we going to do if inflation is high, or inflation, well, if you say it's high, what happens to a market? You got to be very precise. Don't mix in something that's optimistic in one factor and then blow the whole scenario. But I think it's a wise practice in doing strategic planning, thinking long term for the organization. So anyway, that captured my attention when I was looking at your profile. So then you moved to that, and as we were talking about, you joined the LinkedIn movement in 2004. I can't believe LinkedIn is 20 years old. How did you get into LinkedIn?
I would have liked to say that it was all clear and I saw this coming, but the truth is I was very surprised. It was I got an invitation from someone I trusted, and initially I signed up in February 2004 simply because I thought that person was coherent and intelligent, and I played with LinkedIn a bit. And what do you know, 2 years later, 3 years later, as a quota-carrying salesperson, LinkedIn helped me identify the person I needed to reach out to within the organization. So I cut my sales cycle by 30%. And that's the moment I thought that this was too interesting for me to continue with my day job, and I started looking under the hood and specialize. And then people ask you to train their sales force, and LinkedIn has over 1 billion users as we speak, Ted, and every second 3 people sign up.
Wow. Gosh, okay, I've forgotten about how big it is and how new it is, but it sounds interesting. It's even the takeaways from your story that sometimes the opportunity comes from a trusted friend, and how important. I love that what you said. A trusted friend, somebody, and they prove to be worthy of listening to their advice. I think that's a huge lesson. Now, one of the things I like to focus on in the podcast is, of course, a person is my guest, leadership model. And as we were talking about that, you said your leadership model derives from your parents, which I think is wonderful. So tell us a little bit about that. What is it about your parents that shaped your leadership style?
Great. As a caveat, had you asked me, when I was a teenager or 6-year-old, then I would have given you either a Perry Mason or an author or somebody else. But now that I'm old enough, I can look at my parents and my dad that's passed away and see that what they tried to teach us, my brother and I, was to be able to face practically anything on our own, thanks to our mental strength and tenacity, if you'd like. And it wasn't just words. My parents had to move from Tunisia to France and then to Israel without knowing the language. And my dad started a business, and he had to to deal with an economic crisis that was very serious in Israel. And no matter how the odds were and how difficult the situation was, he projected a deep understanding and a deep belief in the fact that he could overcome this, even when he didn't know exactly how. And that's something that he taught us, and something we picked up, and that's helped us face the challenges that we have to face in work, at home, and in any other situation.
That's awesome. So you learned, I'd say, two things: resilience and tenacity from your parents, and they've played out. What are some of the obstacles you've had to overcome where you've exercised that resilience and tenacity that you got from your parents?
You could look at simply economic crisis, great dot-com bust 2000, and maybe the 2008 financial crisis, where lots of my clients did not find any training budget and had to people I used to work with had lost their jobs and things like that. At the end of the day, when you're an independent, you sometimes go from feast to famine. In some cases, you can't have enough. Everyone wants a piece of you, and in other cases, no one is reaching out, and you don't know how you'll make ends meet. And you need to become again strong, and you need to remember that even when you're very busy, you need to try and be ready for the next slump or the next recession. And the ability to cope with uncertainty is something that with time becomes easier and even enjoyable. Initially it was a horror, but now when you think about it and when you know that some things are better left for those times, there's a lot of fun involved.
That sounds marvelous. So you developed the tenacity, your self-confidence, got you through a lot of difficult things, the ups and downs of business. I think that's incredibly important for leaders and for entrepreneurs to keep in mind, because there are always ups and there are always downs. Now, one of the things, again, as I said, we focus on leadership. So how can leadership be a platform for leadership development?
If we'd like to know how LinkedIn can become a platform for leadership, we need to start with non-LinkedIn leadership.
Very good.
LinkedIn is just a tool. And if we try to play with the tool before understanding the basics, then we may not get the results we want. So forget LinkedIn. What message would you like to project? What is your leadership style? Who would you like to lead? What is your team made of? If you know the answers to those, then LinkedIn becomes an asset you can leverage. But if you master LinkedIn and have no clue about leadership, you're in for a bumpy ride. So start with leadership per se. What is the challenges that you face, and what are the strengths you have? If you like, as a leader, everyone listening or watching this has a unique leadership style. And you at GSSI, you help companies distill and define that leadership style and grow future leaders. Once you do this, now you can look at LinkedIn and try to minimize the gap between your regular leadership style and the actions you perform on LinkedIn. You could be a great leader and be an introvert, but Ted, if you're an introvert and everything you do on LinkedIn shows a different personality, then people who know you look at this and say, hey, this is not genuine, this is not authentic, this is not Ted, we're playing some role here. So the easiest thing to do, and something that many leaders find very challenging, instead of trying to find a new leadership style or a new personality, we have a personality. And that personality has served us well in the past. And there's no reason LinkedIn needs to change that. We need to convey we need to behave in the same way, because otherwise, whenever there's a gap, people think about your authenticity and about your integrity and ask themselves questions. Don't do that. Find your leadership style first and simply use it on LinkedIn as a tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate that. I love the idea that you start outside of the tool and you have your leadership style solidified first. It's an awesome perspective. But now turning to what you do as leadership, a LinkedIn consultant, how do you go about clients use LinkedIn in your business?
Pretty much like we just said, I would ask many clients think that the initial chat with me would be about LinkedIn. That the truth is, it's not about LinkedIn. It's about your business. How does the ideal client look from your perspective? How is your current model? What would you like people to say about you when they refer business to you? These are answers that many leaders can answer easily. And then we can look at LinkedIn, because LinkedIn should be, think of it as some sort of black box. If you have a system that helps you grow if you have a North Star metric that's important in your business, then we should be able to find a way for LinkedIn to influence and strengthen that North Star. Your North Star may be different from mine, from a third person, but if you know the answer to those questions, then LinkedIn becomes an easy way to drive more business to the more ideal clients to your business, if you'd like, or more talented candidates, if you'd like to hire more talents to join your team.
That's excellent. Well, we're running short on time. So one of the things I always ask for is, what are the 3 practical things someone should do after listening to us? So what do you think? What are the 3 practical things you would advise our listeners to do?
Well, so I'll start with networking, because we discussed it initially in our chats. And as we speak, we can think of people we used to be in touch with in the past, but they're sort of fading away or disappearing. So we'll call them Joe and Jane. We used to work with them maybe 6 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. If we don't act upon it, then there will be a time we will not feel comfortable reaching out to those people. So try to identify those, and initially the easiest thing to do would be to ask yourself, who are the 3 interesting people I met this year, and I want to keep in touch with them even when our project has ended, because I will no longer work with them. I will no longer collaborate with them. And if you find a way to understand what's important for them and what they're interested in, then you will find it easy to keep in touch with those people, let me say it, when you don't need anything from them. And if in 2 years' time you'd like that person to introduce you to someone, most people will feel a lot safer and easier to reach out to them. Nobody likes it when we only remember them when we need them. So please don't be that person.
Well, that's awesome.
Maybe a second quick suggestion would be to use the route that your ideal client goes through. If you're managing a company that has 400 employees, then maybe 380 are not reporting to you, or 390. Try to buy the product and see what happens when you visit your website and when you try to understand what's the next step. And in some cases, you will find that it's not easy for people to perform the action they'd like to perform. And if we transfer this to LinkedIn, 3 simple questions. 1, who's your ideal reader? So for some people, it would be a prospect. For other leaders, it would be their staff, their current employees. And for a third type of leaders, it could be talents they would like to join the company. So 1, who's the ideal reader? 2, what action would you like those people to perform once they visit your LinkedIn profile? And 3, are we making it as easy as possible for those people to find you, understand quickly what you bring to the table, and go to the next stage? And maybe the last point would be to focus on employees. Our employees often perform amazing acts, and there's the unique feeling you get when the CEO praises you in a large room in the town hall. It gives you a lot of strength, and you could do the same thing via LinkedIn publicly. You could find action that your employees have performed. It could be a junior employee, it could be a customer-facing service representative. But the fact that the CEO, highlighted that action would be something they remember for a long time. It's not a lot of effort, really. It's just acting as a good person in the first place.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate that. I think those are 3 awesome practical steps that you've shared with our folks today. Daniel, I want to thank you. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy day to have a conversation with me. We will post this to our listeners. We're going to post Daniel's website, which is simply danieleflon.com.
Yes, sir.
Please visit him, learn more about what he does, both visit his LinkedIn page as well as his website. Daniel, thank you. This has been most enjoyable.
Thank you very much, Ted.
Now we've got 3 ideas of what to share from today's podcast. So again, what I'd like for you to be able to do is take those ideas, make them your own, reflect on them. What do they mean to you? And then thirdly, commit to an action plan. Commit to actions that you can take to apply what we've talked about today. If you want help, if you want some ideas, if you want some accountability, please contact me. Contact me by sending me a text, 913-306-1499. Put podcast follow-up in the text message, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you on our next broadcast.